If you don't watch Derek Carr every week, you'd be forgiven for thinking he's an average starting quarterback who could make another team better. But he's actually a hugely inefficient football player. Carr is an easy sell because he is phenomenally accurate and has great arm strength. If the physical act of throwing the ball was the only thing that mattered for a quarterback, he'd be top 5. But the Raiders have always been anchored down by his inability to execute offenses as designed, make proper coverage reads, and show any resilience against pressure. For a long time, his issues have been explained away or blamed on teammates, but now he's a free agent, his next team won't be as forgiving as the Raiders were. What misleads people with Carr is that he can be effective in certain situations. This play is a great example of that. NFL offenses have 5 non-eligible receivers and 5 eligible receivers with the quarterback on each play. The best quarterbacks want as many options as possible so they can figure out how to attack the defense and where to go with the ball. Lesser quarterbacks tend to rely on plays that dictate to the defense by limiting their options. That means they sacrifice eligible receivers from running routes to use them to try and manipulate the defense to scheme a specific receiver open. For this touchdown against Jacksonville, the Raiders are going to send just one receiver into a route past the line of scrimmage. That's Devontae Adams at the top of the screen. The other receiver is going to run an end around, while the running back executes a play fake with his tight end who stays in the pass block. The whole goal of this play is to get Adams one-on-one with the deep safety and pull the front side of the coverage forward so he has a huge amount of space to work in against him. When we roll the play on, we can see how Carr fakes to his running back, but also then fakes the end around to his receiver. The cornerback at the bottom of the screen is waiting to see if anyone leaks out into the flat. He doesn't think there's any threat behind him, since the only receiver at his side ran behind the quarterback, so he's drawn forward, and that vacates the space. At the same time that Carr is faking in the backfield, Adams slows down in his route to almost a stop, so the cornerback to his side thinks he's run blocking. This takes the cornerback out of the play and leaves Adams one-on-one in wide open space with a running start against the safety. That's not a competition, and the safety predictably falls down. From the end zone angle, we can see that the play fake and extra protection gave Carr a clean pocket. He doesn't have to mitigate any pressure, and he only has one receiver, so he doesn't have to make a coverage read. Since the defender covering that receiver fell down, he also doesn't have to make a difficult throw. Carr can make plays on normal dropbacks too, but his consistency drops to the point that he's one of the least efficient quarterbacks in the league. He beats himself without the defense having to pressure him or play good coverage as often as any other quarterback in the league does. You can't be a winning quarterback if you're completely reliant on play fakes and coverage manipulation to be effective before then sabotaging the offense when asked to do anything above remedial level. So on this play against the Colts, we can see a receiver streaking away from the deep safety into wide open space on the other side of the field once again. It's the same opportunity as the previous play, but this time Carr isn't going to see it, and that's because he's got more than one option in the offense. He has to make an actual read here and diagnose the coverage to figure out what receiver will come open. All 5 receivers release into routes downfield. Carr is in shotgun so he can read the coverage from the start of the play, and there is no play action. When he reaches the top of his drop, he should be able to see the cornerback to the top of the screen. That's his read. He can see that cornerback stepping forward and inside to the sharper breaking crossing route. Carr should see that and immediately look to the space behind him where his other receiver is running to. He definitely can't blame his pass protection for not giving him enough time to see it. Carr has time and space in the pocket. He can even wait for his receiver to get across the logo in the middle of the field before releasing the ball. But instead, he holds it forever to invite the pass rush onto him. Before he's inevitably sacked, we can see how Carr completely abandons his passing posture long before any pressure actually got near him. His feet are flat and his back is hunched so his eyes have dropped. This play should have been a touchdown. Carr's self-sabotage guaranteed that it wouldn't be. Against the New England Patriots, Carr is in shotgun with a balanced spread formation. The offense is running 4 verts. That means the receivers outside the numbers are releasing down the sideline, while the tight end and slot receiver are working down the seams. Carr also has a check down to his running back over the middle. The Patriots are playing cover 2, but it's a warped cover 2 because it features a slot blitz on the wide side of the field. The edge rusher to the top of the screen is going to drop into coverage to balance the defense. The slot cornerback isn't picked up, but because he's coming from a very wide starting position, Carr still has time. Despite that time, he abandons his drop back before ever settling at the top of it. This is symptomatic of Carr not having a process. He always prematurely reacts to pressure and overreacts with aggressive movements. He didn't need to turn and sprint away here. He needed to speed up his decision making. Carr had options. Since the slot blitz came from the wide side of the field and the safety to that side initially lined up tight to the middle of the field, he had a one-on-one matchup down the sideline to his left. If he looked for the seam route on the right side first, he could have seen the defender dropping into coverage showing him his back. That would be a very tight window throw in front of the safety, but it's an option to hit the receiver instead of running sideways. And finally, at the very least, he should have taken a breath and checked the ball to his running back. It wouldn't have gained many yards unless his teammate broke a tackle, but at least gave the offense a chance. And since it was 2nd and 6, even just 2 yards would have completely changed the setup of the ensuing 3rd down. Since he abandoned the play design altogether from the moment the play began, he didn't even force the defense to make the play. He just gave it to them by throwing the ball away prematurely. This is the 3rd and 6 that follows that play. The Raiders have stacked receivers at the bottom of the screen who are going to help each other get a free release. There's a man-beating route combination with a slot fade and in-breaking route to the top of the screen. Critically, the offense is a running back committed to being the 6th blocker standing behind the offensive line. He's perfectly positioned to counter the linebackers standing in the A gap. The Patriots are showing a 6-man blitz, and considering the down and distance, Carr is likely expecting a cover 0 blitz with man coverage across the board. But there's a clear hint that it's not cover 0. 2 of the cornerbacks are pressing at the line of scrimmage. If it was cover 0, they would all be in a line in off-man coverage at the first down line like this. Instead, the defense is actually not even in man coverage at all. They have 3-man zones working on both levels of the coverage while rushing 5 players after the quarterback. This is a critical distinction for Carr to recognise after the ball is snapped. There's a huge difference between a 6-man rush and a 5-man rush. He has 6 blockers in protection against 5 pass rushers now, so the urgency to get rid of the ball isn't where he expected it to be. Carr's eyes go right because he thinks it's man coverage, and he thinks the outside cornerback is responsible for the outside receiver, so he will be open when the inside cornerback goes with the slot receiver up the sideline. At this stage in the play, Carr should see the setup of the 2 cornerbacks and know that what he expected to happen isn't happening. The inside cornerback is looking at him, not the inside receiver. The outside cornerback has turned to go deep already. Coverages always tip themselves off by body shape and the technique the defensive backs are playing. There's only so much you can hide when you're disguising what you're doing. Rookie quarterbacks are supposed to struggle to see these hints. Only bad quarterbacks can't see it 10 years into their careers. A further hint that the coverage is different to what was expected can be seen in the linebacker dropping into his zone while reading Carr's eyes. Carr never sees him at all. When we roll the video on, it's slowed down, but this is the time it takes Carr to abandon his posture and begin running into the right flat. It would have taken him even less time to turn his eyes left and stay in a passing posture. If he had done that, he had a wide open receiver for the first down. Carr never sees this. He has no awareness of the coverage, and instead of adjusting after seeing something unexpected on the front side of the play to get to the back side of the play, he kept staring down the same spot and moved his feet instead of his eyes. He moved himself towards the problem instead of away from it. Quarterbacks who move their feet before their eyes inevitably move themselves into trouble more often and miss more opportunities than quarterbacks who do the opposite. Carr had a clean pocket but ran himself to the sideline and missed a more difficult throw back across his body because of that. No matter how strong your arm is or how accurate you can be in the right situation, you can never overcome having bad technical traits or awareness as an NFL quarterback. NFL defenses as a collective and individual defenders are simply too good at that level. Carr is a quarterback who abandons the pocket rather than one who moves within it. When he does try to reset within the pocket, the results are more often than not disastrous. We see a great example of it here against the Indianapolis Colts. The Raiders release all 5 eligible receivers into routes downfield with a check down on either flat. The Colts aren't showing it, but they're blitzing a 5th defender after the quarterback from the inside linebacker position on the wide side of the field. Carr comfortably reaches the top of his drop with his eyes on the deep safety. He's looking for his vertical routes working the middle of the field. From the end zone angle at the same point in the play, we can see the width on the Colts pass rush. They're coming hard off of both edges, including interior rushers who have widened. This creates a crevice through the middle of the pocket that Carr can step up through. He actually does a great job to evade the sack and beat the pass rusher coming off his left side. He shows awareness and strength to shrug the tackle attempt off his left shoulder. But once he reaches that pocket of space, he never resets his feet and instead drops his eyes instantly. Carr wants the flat. He doesn't want to stay in the middle of the field. He's not comfortable with defenders around him. If he had settled and kept his eyes up, he had 3 relatively easy open receivers to throw to. The route over the middle of the field is a particularly big miss because it was set up for a good gain. Instead of keeping the offense on track, Carr takes an avoidable sack and rewards the pass rush that he had initially evaded. This is the very first play of the Jaguars game, so it's 1st and 10 and the offense is under no pressure to chase a big play. The right side of the field is where all the action is going to take place. Carr has 3 receivers working the narrow side. His running back is going to the flat, his tight end is running the seam, and the wide receiver outside is running a curl route. When the play rolls on, the tight end runs into the linebacker over the middle, so his route is thrown off course and so is the defender's coverage. Carr can't consider his tight end here, and the defender is actually slowed so that he's in a perfect position to take away the passing into the curl route. Carr's flat route is technically open, but not really because it wouldn't gain any yardage. The quarterback is right to hold the ball here and let the play develop further. That extra beat in the play sees the underneath coverage shift wide outside the numbers, and the tight end is now in his route and looking back for the ball. Carr has an underneath receiver breaking inside to space and the tight end running into a double team downfield. This should be an easy choice. He should take the underneath route for a good gain and a potential first down. It's an easy throw on a wide open receiver. Instead, he floats the ball in the general area of his tight end off his back foot. This ball should be intercepted by the safety coming over the top, but his eyes are on the tight end instead of on the ball, so he runs through the catch point and into his opponent. That's the only thing stopping this play from being an interception. This wasn't the only time in this game when Carr was lucky to avoid an interception. On this play, he executes a play fake and hits a short drop to get the ball out quickly, but he misses the window to his tight end because he flinches against the pressure. The defender turned around early enough to see the ball and catch it with two hands, but his ball skills were lacking, so he settled for punching it away to safety instead. Carr plays every play as if he's off balance, and that's the primary reason why he has 28 interceptions over the last 2 seasons. He throws all different kinds of interceptions and balls that should be intercepted, whether it's a combination of slight imprecisions during his process that lead to a coverage misread or a sloppy ball placement, or a more egregious error where he stares down the wrong receiver. Carr fails in every way imaginable. That's why it's impossible to scheme around him. This next play highlights Carr's tunnel vision. It's 2021 against the New York Giants. The ball is on the right hash mark and Carr has 3 receivers to his right side on the narrow side of the field. Defensively, the Giants are showing a 5-man pass rush without tipping their coverage behind it. All Carr knows at this stage is the defense is a single high safety, but they will play zone coverage when the ball is snapped. Regardless of what happens at the snap, Carr is fully focused on his out and up route on the narrow side of the field. For some reason, he thinks that receiver is guaranteed to have single coverage. His eyes are on the target when he hits the top of his drop, and he's going to manipulate the cornerback with a pump fake. We can see the pump fake itself doesn't really have the desired impact as the corner is still able to turn and run with the receiver down the sideline, but it did impact the safety who began the play on the right hash mark in the deep middle. He's tracking Carr in the backfield. Carr's pump fake gave that safety a head start as he's now sprinting towards the sideline. Not only is Carr's pass underthrown and too far inside for the receiver to catch it, but the safety has an easy job of undercutting it for the interception before going out of bounds. This turnover was completely created by Carr. He can't blame his receiver or his pass protection for anything here. Against the Cincinnati Bengals, we see that same tunnel vision. Carr's eyes are going to focus on the narrow side of the field again, where his tight end is running a corner route and the receiver outside of him is cutting inside beneath him. The defense doesn't disguise its coverage at all. They're playing zone, and the outside cornerback offers Carr an easy read as he passes off the outside receiver immediately to drop into the tight end's corner route. Yet Carr is very happy to throw the ball straight to him as if he was never there. Carr just assumed this was man coverage before the ball was snapped without any evidence and never thought to consider the defense might be in a different coverage after the snap. In this empty set play against the Los Angeles Chargers, Carr is going to be fully responsible for diagnosing the coverage and managing the pocket. All of his receivers are working into routes downfield, and none of them start the play in position to even suggest they're going to block first. Carr has a tight end running directly down the middle of the field, which is his biggest potential gain. The Chargers don't do anything to disguise their coverage. They show a 4-man rush, and there's no heavy shift in the zones that the defenders behind it play at the snap. Carr predetermines that he's going to throw the ball to his tight end, but it's really hard to see a reason why. The only suggestion that the tight end would be open was the width of the safeties before the snap, but the middle linebacker started in a deep position to cover the middle of the field. That's why the safeties were able to be that wide. That should have been obvious. All of this means that Carr's intended target is double teamed when the play develops. From the end zone angle, we can see Carr looking at his tight end. He should clearly see the linebacker, Drew Tranquill, waiting to undercut his throw. But this is what a quarterback who looks at his receivers other than the coverage does. There's no process of understanding the positioning of the defenders relative to the receiver he wants to throw to. It's just a pure guessing game for Carr, which is why Tranquill is able to catch this ball and run it back deep into Raiders territory. If we run the play back to the point when Carr is releasing the ball, we can see very clearly that the space against his coverage is outside and underneath. Carr threw to the middle and deep. He has 2 receivers attacking those spaces underneath for what would be simple throws and good gains. Instead, he threw into the heart of the coverage. He did exactly what the defense wanted him to do. In the same game, we have another example of Carr on a straight drop back in the pocket, with all 5 of his eligible receivers releasing into routes past the line of scrimmage. Carr is going to have open receivers on short, outside throws on both sides of the field once again. When he hits the top of his drop, Davante Adams is open on a curl route to the top of the screen, and the receiver running an in-breaking route against off coverage is open at the bottom of the screen. Carr is actually looking at Adams at this stage of the play. He had quickly checked the position of the deep safety during his drop back and then immediately turns his eyes to Adams. This looks like it's about to be a perfectly executed play from the quarterback. His front foot is setting, his arm is cocked, and he has a strong back foot in place to deliver the ball, but he doesn't throw it. Instead, he resets and turns back in field for his drag route over the middle. That receiver is blanketed in coverage and the space in front of him is taken away by a teammate. The in-breaking route to Carr's right side is still open, so he could throw that, but his best option is to step forward in the pocket and regather himself. Instead, he has locked his eyes onto that drag route and is going to throw to it no matter what all the evidence around him tells him to do. It's easily intercepted, and even if that defender wasn't there, his receiver was going to get clattered after catching the ball for a minimal gain if it had reached him. There was no good outcome here. You're supposed to learn from your mistakes as an NFL quarterback, but we saw essentially the same play for an interception against the New Orleans Saints. We're going to roll this play forward straight away. The defense is rushing 4 and playing man coverage outside with zones over the middle. Carr immediately looks to his left where Adams is running a sharp cutting route that goes inside first, then breaks breaks back to the outside. There's a crossing route working behind that route that is important to note at this point as well. We can see from the end zone angle that Carr is ready to throw the ball to Adams, but he sees the linebacker waiting to undercut the ball, so he pulls it back in. He doesn't reset his feet and take stock of the rest of the defense though. He barely brings the ball back to his body before it's cocked up again so that he can throw to that crossing route over the middle of the field. Carr never looks, so he never sees the linebacker standing in the passing lane, and he never resets his feet, only turning his upper body, so his mechanics are awful. The first defender should pick the ball off, but instead he can only pat it into the air. Fortunately for him, there's a second defender in position to take advantage for the turnover. Ironically, it's the defender Carr initially avoided by not throwing the ball to Adams. Most of Carr's career has been spent behind above average, very good, or at the very least adequate offensive lines. He's never had to elevate the players around him, and he's never had to face overwhelming pressure that he didn't create himself on a regular basis. This play against the Rams really captures how the slightest hint of pressure sets off alarm bells between his ears. Carr has decent straight line speed, but his athleticism as a whole is problematic. That's primarily because he's got very heavy feet. He can't pick his way through tight spaces or bounce on the balls of his feet to quickly reset inside the pocket. This interception in the red zone against the Rams comes about because of Carr's slow feet and poor decision making. He reaches the top of his drop unencumbered, and while the pocket is tighter than previous examples, it is still clean. His left guard is being pushed back, which Carr needs to adjust to. Carr could have stayed on his position to force the defensive tackle to continue to win his block, or he could have feigned and moved forward before resetting back in his original spot to redirect the defender. He ultimately crouches, drops his eyes, and tries to jump forward for some reason. This only serves to take his legs out from beneath him. He actually begins his throwing motion at this point, so both of his feet are coming off the ground and he's tipped too far forward. Predictably, this leads to the ball floating through the air and going straight to a Rams defender. This level of panic is impossible to scheme around or compensate for with a supremely talented supporting cast. Someone like Matthew Stafford was able to handle pressure, he was just inconsistent doing it. It's easy to understand why some team fan bases would be desperate to acquire Derek Carr as a starting quarterback. If you've spent the last 8 years watching a combination of Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh McCown, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, Mike White, and Joe Flacco, then it's an obvious upgrade. But it's one thing to be better than some of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. It's a completely different thing to be a starter who is capable of playing consistent, efficient, and effective football. The goal adding Carr is that he does just enough, or he gets hot at the right time on a loaded roster so he's not asked to do a lot and you benefit as a team for that. But if that's the type of complementary offense you're building, then you don't want the quarterback who beats himself and turns the ball over too often. You want a quarterback who might be more physically limited but plays more consistently to the skill set that he has. The Matthew Stafford comparison is at least interesting, but the problem there is Stafford was able to elevate the players around him, he was just inconsistent doing it. Stafford's skill level was really high, he was just inconsistent playing to it. Carr's skill level isn't close to that, it's actually quite low.